gang is Hexy. So we took on something that Hexy's never played before, and that's a straight. Well, it's a card game. Um, no, it's not poker. It's not Go Fish. It's actually, which I know a lot of y'all have seen out there. A lot of you already gotten it, but it's the Point Blank. Yeah, you're never going to see that like that. It's the Point Blank. V for victory. V is for victory. Uh, Germans, Americans, Brits in this thing. The first rule of thumb I'm going to say about playing this game: don't play it on top of a piece of plexiglass. The cards have a very shiny finish to them, and they kind of slide around on plexiglass. The game mat underneath this is it's not super slick or shiny. Probably be easier to play on that, and it's a good looking map. The sectors and the areas in the map that you see depicted, you don't really consider those when you're playing, because you have what's called terrain cards where you're playing this game. And there's a terrain card right there. Now, I'm going to talk about these right off the bat, because this is what they did was really cool. So if you have, and I'm sorry, it's going to stay focused right in this area. If you have a unit, a squad, or a half squad, or a vehicle, as they get ready, like this tank sitting over here off to the right, if he has a movement order, which this guy does, all right, to move into this zone, during the upkeep phase, which is at the start of each impulse, all right, the game is played in impulses, you go back and forth, you will pick the terrain randomly from cards. So I picked the terrain and I placed it in there. Now, here's the deal. There are certain, and believe me, they have a numerous amount of terrain in this game, different terrains you can use. If the unit doesn't like that terrain, now, when I say this, you're going to think that this is odd. If he doesn't like that terrain, there are certain cases where the unit can refuse to move in there. He can stay under his movement orders, which this guy is under his movement orders, okay? And on the next upkeep phase, he can draw another terrain card. Well, wait a minute. Terrain on the battlefield, Hexy, doesn't just change like that. Terrain doesn't know, unless you go out and mow the grass, it makes the grass shorter. That's not what this is depicting. What they're telling you is he doesn't want to get into that wood, where that wood building is, but there might be other terrain in this sector. So you can draw another card on the next turn, and you put this in here instead, and now it's brush terrain. Oh, he likes that one, so he can move into that one. He'll move into that one now. So there's certain circumstances where you have choices, all right? Now, so what I talk about is, the terrain doesn't change like that. Well, so this part of this sector here might have some brush cover in it, and then over here to the far side it's got a wooden building. That's kind of like what it's saying. Well, he's choosing not to go to where the wooden building is. He's choosing to go into that sector where the brush is. I don't know if I've seen a game that ever does it. Then again, Hexy's never played a card game, so this is my first experience with it. So that mechanic, I think, is extremely cool. Now, I can't go into all the rules because I've only been playing this for the last couple nights. I caught Dev online to answer a couple questions for me, and interestingly enough, I only had a couple, and he showed me where the rule was. I think they just had a rule that they needed to put it in one more location, and it had to do with spotting. So we resolved that, and it was good to go. When you're spotting in this game, you can spot or shoot through one degraded hex. Now, what do I mean by degraded? Or one degraded sector, I'm sorry. Remember, I'm a hex encounter guy. So that little eyeball in the top corner that's half open, that means degraded terrain. That means could be some cut down on your view through that type of terrain. And then you have ones that are blocked, such as the one with the closed eyeball. You can't see through blocked terrain, okay? You can see into it, but you have to spot into it to identify if there's an enemy in that thing or not. All right, and it's all based on, well, we're going to say die roll, but in this system here, they're kind enough to give you 2 die, but you have action cards. And on the action cards, you have the pips in the corner. And you'll draw, if you need a 2d6, you'll draw 2 cards and you use the pips. Yeah, you'll use pips. So that would be 1 and a 1, okay? Or 11, however you want to call it. And that's how it works. Now, these action cards also have actions on them. And there's different types of actions. And believe me, there's quite a few actions on here. Like that lightning bolt right there is just a generic unit action. So whatever unit you choose to use that card on, they have a list of actions, which you can see in these rows. And they'll be able to execute one of those actions, okay? And then there's certain circumstances where, like if you draw, let's see if I can find one here. All right, so let's say you draw this card here with that fire icon, fire attack. Well, all of these units right here in this sector, if that's where I'm playing, they can all fire at the same time. And when you fire, you choose a priority unit, a primary unit, and he uses his full strength, which this guy is a 1. And then he uses his support weapon, which these squads can carry 2 support weapons. So he's got an M19-19. He'll use 2 there, so there's 3. Then you got this airborne squad over here, who is, which I should have had that brown, or this M19-19 with him. He has a 2. So secondary units in the hex fire half, and half of their support weapons they got him. Then you got a leader sitting here. He has a die roll modifier of 1. So now you just add 1 to that. So you just went 2, 3, 4, and now you've added the leader, that's 5. All right. Then you have distance modifier. So if I'm shooting only into the next sector, he's going to get another +1. So now he's up to 6. All right, so let's just say that's all the modifiers for the fire combat. Then you go over here and you draw a card, and you take that pip, so 6 + 1, they are now firing a 7, okay? Then for the defender, you find the terrain modifier, which he's got a +1, okay? And that's an objective hex, by the way. So the Germans are in the objective right now. So he's got a +1. Then you're going to go draw, a card for him. Now, he might have cover, which if I'm playing solo, and believe me, the solo flow charts in this thing are awesome. Took me a couple minutes to get used to it, but they have a description in the back of the rules book on how to use the flow charts for solo play. And it's pretty stinking good, I'm telling you right now. All right. But this guy has a cover marker, so he might get a benefit for that. So now let's say he's +2. All right. So he's +1 for terrain. He's +2 for that. And then he draws a card, and he draws a 1. So now he's a 3. So our fire was 6 to 3. All right. So that means that the attacker has a +3 on his fire. If the attacker's fire number is greater than the defender's, and I think equal to, I don't know, I'd have to look at that. You go to the chart here, and you will roll, or you'll take that 6 minus that 3, so you got a +3. You draw another card. We won't use that one. We'll use that one. We'll use this one here. So we drew a 4. All right. So 4 + 3 is a 7. Then you go to the chart here, and you use the morale of the defenders. Okay. And I'm assuming with multiple, you would just apply it to both of them individually, and you apply your result, whether the unit is shaken, whether he gets reduced, and it even tells you if he's a good order unit, which he has nothing wrong with him, all right, or he's a shaken unit, okay? And then it's got half squad, same thing. Then it's got vehicles, the same thing. And then you apply the appropriate effect, which could be shaken or reduced, or I guess E is eliminated, all right? If you get 2, if you're reduced and you get reduced again, you're eliminated, i.e. this MG42 sitting here by himself because the infantry squad that was here got reduced once before, and then he got to a half squad, and then he got reduced again. Now I talk about the flow charts for playing solo play. This game is very well set up for solo play. And I've only been playing this for 2 days now. And like I say, it's my first card game, so I'm a little slow with it. But once I grasped the theory for the flow chart, it made things a lot easier. And let me show you. So when it's the solo player's time to play, and it doesn't matter which side you play, you can play solo. You have this chart here where you'll pick 2 cards, all right, and you'll play the numbers by the pips. So like say you picked a 5 there, and their pips were 2 and 3. Depending on what the posture is, which in this scenario I'm playing, it's attack, all right, which is that 3rd column over. And I picked a 5, a 2 and a 3 pip. I have a move/flank. And you can randomly choose which one of those you want to do. Maybe you use a dice or something like that. And then you go to your flow chart, which you have multiple flow charts in here. Let me get the right one. So for standard move, where are you at, baby? That's melee overrun. All right, so for a move action, if you were in a defensive posture, hey, there's your flow chart. And the flow charts cover everything. And it asks you questions. Blah, blah, blah. Is it this? Yes or no? If it's yes, you go one way. If it's no, you go the other way. And you just go right down the flow chart. And believe me, it's I've used it on every turn for the Germans, and the thing's pretty good. It works pretty darn well. It doesn't do something where you think, well, that was stupid. All right. Of course, it's going to involve what action you get with your pips off the cards you draw. There's an objective in the game. Well, this one here only had one. It was a bridge right here. And like I say, the Germans are in it right now. So right now they own the objective. And I haven't gone through all the victory conditions, but because my focus has been on let's understand how this works and how do we get in there, okay, and get to the objective and take it. So right now that's pointless. Like I said, it's Hexy's first card game. You know I like crunchy. Well, somebody made a card game that has a lot of crunch to it, but it's not difficult to use the system. The solo system, matter of fact, the most difficulty I found for me is on the player side was deciding what action I want to take. Do I want, these guys were not busted up. So do I want to keep firing and not even waste my time moving this tank over here or bringing the other infantry forward because I got 2 more infantry squads sitting over here. Got my officer there. And these guys were doing damage on those German units on that bridge. Now, their cover was only 1. At least it was 1, so they got something. And it wasn't, I couldn't resist the shooting because I needed to cause damage there because then I could move into that place right there and take over the objective and then focus on bringing this tank up. Simple, all right? No, not so simple. Trying to decide which one you wanted to do, that was the hard part of this. For the solo player, you've got charts to do it. Heck, you could probably play solo for both sides just using the flow charts just to see what kind of outcome you would get with the game. I think that would be really cool to actually do that. Lots of cards in this box. I mean, lots. So the gang at Lock and Load has covered a lot of ground with this card game. Now, like I said, once again, I haven't played any others. I know there's one off the top of my head I'm trying to think of. I always wanted to say Undaunted, but I don't know if that's the right one or not. But from what I've seen of that other game that people played, not quite as detailed as this. You also have chits for this game. You have cardboard counters to identify certain things, like you can see on here. There's a spotted counter, there's a shaken counter, you've got fatigue counter 1 on this unit sitting back here, you've got a fatigue counter 1 sitting right there. This game here, if you have 2 fatigue points, which when you do things like fire, move, assault, stuff like that, that causes fatigue. And if you do another one of those fatigue causing actions and you already have 2, then you become spent. And what happens when you become spent is you turn the card sideways and he's pretty much useless for any kind of offensive type actions, all right? Well, you have leaders which is really cool function of this game here. You might, let's say you fired, this guy was on 2 fatigue. Let's get this guy out of the way. Let's say this guy here was on 2 fatigue and he fires. All right, so now his 2 fatigue, he's going to be spent and the fatigue marker gets removed the minute he becomes spent, okay? But then this leader over here, who you can use a leader action at any time, okay, during any impulse, no matter where you are, and the leader has some special actions. This guy here could rally or he can ready. Well, guess what? He doesn't need to rally this guy, but he needs to ready him. So he's going to spend himself, he's going to do a spent thing on him, and he's going to use his ready. So he turns sideways. Now he can no longer be used, but guess what? That infantry squad's ready to get in and ready to pour machine gun fire, all right? Pretty cool. That's a pretty cool and unique leader mechanic that I don't think I've seen this in a Hex Encounter game other than you have to do it during a rally phase or something like that. So this one provides an on-the-fly adjustment for your leader. Now, don't freak out because your leader's spent. So the turn's over. The opponent, he goes, and then when it comes back to you, your first phase is your upkeep phase. Well, during the upkeep phase, guess what? Your leaders recover. Now he's useful again. All right? He can apply his die roll modifier all day long to units that are with him or that he is with. And he can move with the units that he is with. These functions down below are those are specialized leader actions and all the leaders are different. I mean, there might be some that are same, but they all there's multiple abilities and you have a chart for that too. Tells what they do. But it's pretty cool that he can now add that +1 to any fire, rally stuff, things like that. But the minute you use one of these special abilities down here, he becomes spent and he can't do it again until you've readied him back up again, okay? Armor, I can't explain too much about armor because I didn't get my armor into fire, but they have multiple fire abilities, okay? The little white numbers you'll see on the side for like the infantry and machine support weapons and stuff, that's your range. And then the red circle number, whether it's a circle or whether it's a triangle, I believe is frontal fire. You have a frontal arc you fire into. And then you've got things like, I know there's HE, there's armor piercing, you're shooting and stuff like that, but you've got the strengths and then you've got the ranges. And then even the tanks have special And that's partly, what the crew is capable of doing in there. All right. And then you've got an armor, front and flank. And then you've got your short, medium, and long range abilities, penetration and firepower, okay, on this here. So I didn't get a chance to do those yet. I wanted to get some video on this so y'all could see what this game was like. Okay, and I'm going to go back to it again. Hexy's never played a card game. All right. The rules tell you, like I say, this mat is just so you can keep stuff organized. You don't have to use that mat. You can just put it on a table and play it. But I'm going to recommend, if you do, don't put it under plexi. Use the mat so you can sort your stuff out. And you have stacking limits, just like a hex encounter game or an area movement game. You have stacking limits in the hexes, like 3 infantry squads or maybe 2 infantry squads and 1 AFV or something like that. Terrain might dictate as to what you can stack in there. But use the mat. Don't put it under plexi. Just play right on top of the mat. And like I said, you don't like the mat really, it serves no purpose other than to show you, it gives you a label for sectors, a label for rows, areas and rows. Okay. And then here's your middle zone here, anything with a 0 across there. That's so that's like your focus point of where the objective might be. I haven't looked at all the scenarios as to whether there's like an objective deep behind the enemy line that you got to get to. Range in these things, when you're calculating distance from when you're going up the sectors, it's 1, 1, 1, 1. When you go sideways, it's 2. So it would be 2, 4. So if you're shooting and you need from here to here, your range is going to be 4. All right. So keep that in mind. Is this game fun? I believe it is. I really do. Trying to learn it slows it down a little bit for me, and plus the fact I've never played a card game. But then I was starting to realize, come on. This box has a tray in it that is just loaded with cards, okay? All right, and I only have what, 1/10 of the cards out that I'm using. You've got this massive stack of action cards, which if you look over here, those 2 stacks right there are the action cards. Those are the ones with your chits on them, your pips, and the different actions that you can take, okay? Can a unit use both actions from the same sector? Yes, they can, okay? Or maybe you have 2 units in a sector, and you have one do this, one do that, all right? There's all kinds of little things you can do here, but this is the stack of action cards. I remember the first time I set that up, I was like, my God, man, and the turn doesn't end until you've gone through that whole deck. I'm like, my God, I'm going to play 1 turn for 8 days. You tear through these things. Solo player, you discard right off the bat, then you draw the next 2, all right? And then for every action you take, and I recommend if you don't want it to last they tell you if you're using dice to remove 2 cards from the deck every time you roll the dice. So you can roll dice all you want, just remember when you do to remove the appropriate number of cards. So you actually, I was down to about here, I guess, so I was halfway through it. And as you can see, I haven't moved a whole lot of stuff. I've been doing a lot of fighting right there at that bridge. So that's probably a good thing because there's so much randomness in there. It's really, really cool. So that's a good thing. And then the terrain cards, like I say, is a stack. It's actually almost 2 stacks that size because you have multiples of the same terrain: clear, wood, stream, there's stone building, wooden building, field, roads. There's just all kinds of stuff in here. Stone walls, you got marshes, bogs, hills, you got all kinds of stuff. And there's, you'll have spotting ability or different line of sight abilities from the different types of terrain and whether or not you can be seen. Heck, you even got a wire terrain that is a pain in the ass. If you're in one of those sectors with wire, you have got to waste an impulse to get rid of that wire so you can move through it. All right. So keep those things in mind. A lot of rules in here. Typical lock and load rule book, 2-column, big font. All right. Looks like there's 5,000 pages in the book, but there's really not because it's large font, 2-column, a lot of pictures to show you how to do stuff. And the one thing about David and that crew, they explain a game pretty good. Are they capable of missing a rule somewhere, or maybe that something's worded right or it's not placed in the right? Sure. All right. But I find very little of that with the lock and load games that they were kind enough to send me and the ones that I actually owned beforehand. So, all right. So, just Hexy's basic overview of Point Blank, V is for Victory, not being a card player game. I think that this one it's actually perfect for me because you all know I like the big crunchy hex encounter games. Well, here's we'll call it crunchy card game, but easily learnable. And I got to admit, I was having fun playing with this. My only thing, I think the only sore spot for me in this entire game is, first off, the graphics are never bad with lock and load. The way they lay out the information on counters or cards is phenomenal. All right, it's easy to read the stuff. I don't think I've had one where I couldn't understand or read the writing on the counters. Well, the cards are bigger, it makes it better. I think the only thing with me is, because I've never played a card game, it's having all of this, where I've got a terrain card and I've got to move units in there on top of that terrain card. Now, this could possibly, for me, be cleared up by not playing on top of plexiglass. So maybe the next run I'll just pull this thing out, put it on top, and we'll play it right off the top. But like I said, the mat is a tiny bit slick. The cards are definitely slick. And I know they do that to, I guess it hardens the card a little better to make it last longer. I'm going to send all of these over to Rough Swordsman and have him sleeve all of them for me. Rough, if you see that, I'm just kidding, Rough. So, point blank, V is for victory. Pretty sharp, pretty extremely detailed card game with not a steep learning curve at all. So, if those of you that have this thing, or you're waiting on it, when you get it out, give it a shot. Play one of the smaller ones. And they have a scenario builder. You can build your own stuff, and they have some recommended setups and points you can use to pick stuff out. And like I say, there's so many unit types and vehicle types in this game, it's not funny. Granted, I don't think they put everything in the game, because if you did that, you'd have to have 15 boxes with just slots for vehicle types. All right, Jeeps, trucks, it's got all that stuff. Get it out, play it, give us some feedback, give Lock and Load some feedback on it. If you've already played it, post some comments down here below this and let me know what you think about it. And this is Hexy, and we'll talk to you in the next round of games we play. See you soon.